Now let's talk about method parameters. It's very cool to be able to create a method and put a lot of code inside. And keep in mind, we could have hundreds of lines of code here. And simply by calling the name of the method, we can have it jump down here and run all these lines of code. Okay? Kind of cool stuff. But this is kind of static, and it would be really great if we could customize what happens in here based on how we call it or what we call it with. And so what we can do is use what's called parameters for that. And I will set a parameter in here. I will say we're going to pass a string, and that string is x. So really what I'm doing is just simply instantiating a variable here called string x. And then inside my method, I'm going to use that variable, and I put a space in hello, and I'm going to concatenate x. So when somebody calls this subroutine now, they're going to send me some sort of string value. I'm going to load it into x right here and then use it inside my method right here. So what happens is that when we call our method, we're actually going to have to pass a string to it. And so what we'll have to do is, when we call it, pass a string like that. So let's go out and run it and see what that looks like. So let's go to our form design and see we've just got our button here. So we'll run this, and when we click on it, it grabs Mark, it throws it down into the code, and it says hello Mark. Okay, so let's break out of this. Just like we thought, we called Mark test, passed Mark. It passed Mark into X and said hello Mark. Now that's kind of neat, but there's some other things that we can do with this that makes it really neat. Okay, let's go back out to our form design, go into Toolbox, and let's go down and find Text Box. Notice I'm under Common Controls, Text Box. I'm just going to double click that and then drag it into place, and I'll make it the same width as my text box. Then I go back into my programming code, and what I'm going to do here is say, I tell you what I want you to pass to Mark text is whatever is in text box 1, then I'll just hit period to accept that, and then there's text. I'll double click that. And so now whatever is in the text box 1 text property, or whatever somebody types in text, gets passed to here. Okay, so now we run this, and you'll notice that if I put Bob in there, it says hello Bob. If I put Jack, hello Jack. Okay, now this is kind of cool because now I'm in a position to call this from different places and pass different messages in there and have different hellos show up. I know it's kind of useless, but it gives you an idea of what's going on. Now, one other thing, we can pass other things in there as well. So let's say that we want to pass integers in here. We want to see a string, and we want to see an integer y. Now, whenever we call it, and I just want to show you that if we try to call this right now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say plus, we'll put a space in there, another plus, and then we've got to convert to string, right? Y. You've seen this already in the course, but since y is an integer, it'll have problems in a string message box environment. But notice there's going to be an error here. My method's looking for a string x and an integer y, and I'm only passing in 1 up here. And so when I try to run this, notice it's going to say, wait a minute, dude, you can't do that. It says there's no overload for Mark that takes 1 argument. In other words, you're only passing 1 argument. This dude's looking for 2. So the way to fix that is to simply come back out of here, and now I put a comma, and I'll put 45. It used to be my age, by the way. Okay, and so now we run this, and you notice we're not going to have any problems. So now I'll type Mark, and we click Mark, and it's passing Mark 45. So you can see you can have multiple parameters being passed, and we can grab multiple parameters down here and work with them and include them in our methods. So that's a real quick look at parameters. You can go out and build on this and do a lot of cool things with it. But if you can understand that, you're a long way down the road toward writing some really cool programs. Okay, so that was method parameters. And now let's move on and continue learning more and more about methods and so forth in the next few videos.